Welcome, everyone. My name is Greg Alexander. I am the CEO of SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm, committed to helping you make your number. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. By tuning in each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for making their numbers. On today's show, we have a very special guest. Joe Vitalone is the Executive Vice President and President of Mitel Networks. Reporting to the CEO, Joe is responsible for the 450 million Americas region, leading the direct sales force and 2,500 channel partners. Mitel Networks is a provider of unified communications platforms, powering more than 2 billion connections per day in 100 countries across 60 million end users. The company does approximately 1.2 billion in annual sales, has 3,300 employees, and is listed on the NASDAQ. Joe himself has an impressive 25-year track record. 2 of the companies he has worked for have gone public, and 3 have been sold for above-average multiples, creating lots of shareholder value in the process. In each of these 5 scenarios, 2 public offerings, 3 sales, Joe was hired by the CEO to do one thing, and that was to generate a return for shareholders quickly, and he did it 5 times. I feel this qualifies Joe as an expert on today's topic, which is generating results quickly. So without further ado, please welcome Joe Vitalone. Joe, how are you?
Hey, hi Greg. How are you?
All right, thanks for coming on the show.
Nice to be here. Nice
Have
studio.
A seat. All right, so today's topic, generating results quickly, okay? So a board plans to sell the company in the future. Very aggressive timelines, so there's no time to waste. You've been involved in 5 of these.
Yep, that's right.
5 exits, okay, which is pretty amazing. So we're hoping that you have some secret sauce
Over a long
there.
time.
Well, don't date yourself. Okay, so this means that you know how to do this. So my first question to you would be, if you are hired to get results quickly by a board and a CEO, and the goal here is to make money for all the shareholders, what do you do in the first 90 days?
First 90 days, I think I focus on the people first, making sure I've got the team that I want. Second thing probably would be my sales process, making sure that we had one sales process, not 5 or 7 or 10, and then that everybody on the team really understand the product inside and out and can present it back to me or my CEO or to a CEO of another company. Okay. So those 3 things, 3 Ps, people, process, and making sure we know the product.
All right, so let's talk about those 3 Ps a little bit. So people, so you have a large team, both a direct sales force and an indirect sales force, right?
That's right, yeah.
Right. That's a lot of people to figure out, do you have the right team or not? So help the audience understand, if you land in a situation like that and you have to figure out, the capability of your team in a pretty short time period, and there's a lot of team members,
right?
How do you do that?
So in the case at Mitel, we had a very big team when I came on, and so we had to do a complete assessment of the team. And so we had consultants that helped profile the team. And then after I profiled the entire team, I went through and organized it in a way where I brought in new blood into the organization. I promoted 4 people from within that were very talented after assessment in the organization. And then I had 4 or 5 people that we got through acquisition that were very talented that we brought. So we had a very good cross-section of talented people from the outside, people internally that we brought up that we thought were stars, and then people that came in through acquisition.
Now, was that deliberate? Did you want that type of mix?
Yeah.
Or did that just kind of happen as a result of the assessments?
No, I kind of wanted it because I thought it showed, it brought me in some energy, some fresh energy, which we needed. We were 40 years old at the time, and we needed a little kick in the back. And so that provided that. And plus, these were people that I had vetted for 20, 30 years and knew their track record similar to mine. And then the people internally, after review, I felt were very, very, they were ready to take that next step and had that energy that I really was trying to create on the team. And then the people that we got through acquisition were very impressive individuals. And so there was a very good cross-section of talent. And so the thought leadership, with a combination of those 4 different segments of our team profile, really created a nice energy, which is why we got the lift that we got in a very short period of time.
Now, new guy comes in, everybody's nervous. First thing you do, we're going to assess everybody.
Yeah.
Now everyone's saying, uh-oh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I might be in trouble.
Yeah.
So how did you perform this assessment, energize the organization with this new talent without kind of freaking everybody out?
Well, I think it's my leadership style. So I met with a lot of individuals personally when I went through, and they really understood. They read up on me, and so they knew of my background. There was a lot of people doing back channel checks on the new guy. So I had plenty of people hitting my LinkedIn. So people knew of me before I came on board. And so I had a lot of support from people outside, which allayed some of the fears that you got with any new person that comes into a leadership role. And then after they met me and they sat down with me and we spoke and we talked about styles and we talked about the sales process and those things, I think people were generally comfortable. I had an opportunity to speak to a couple of big groups. After they heard me speak, I think they knew I was a little more of a carrot guy and less of a stick kind of a person.
Did you manufacture those opportunities to speak, or were they kind of on the calendar and you took advantage of them?
One case, I manufactured it. I made sure that it was a group call that I did right out of the gate to everybody to make sure that they heard my voice and they understood what I was all about, and they didn't get it secondhand. The second one was set up, and it was a great opportunity. We had a partner conference, and it was the second month that I was there, and it was 2,500 people, and a real opportunity to not only address my own employee base and the sales organization, but the entire 1,000 partners that were there.
Yeah. I think it's encouraging for our viewers to hear that you can do a talent assessment program that extensively in that short of a time period. So roughly speaking, and maybe think about all 5 of your companies, because it sounds like this is something you've done your entire career. How long does that take, start to finish?
To really do a good assessment of your team, it takes about 120 days to really do a really good profile of everybody and get a good, so you can look at results, but there's a lot more to it than just results. I mean, that's just one part of the scorecard. You're looking at leadership qualities, you're looking at whether or not people can build rapport, you're looking at referenceability, whether or not they can really move the needle quickly, whether they can handle the stress of the job, the demands of the job. So there's a lot involved in profiling your base.
Okay, the second thing that you mentioned there was sales process. And you talked about having one standard sales process that everybody could follow as opposed to multiple sales processes, right?
Very important.
So tell me about that. So what's your philosophy on that? So you believe in one sales process?
Yeah, one sales process. It has to be simple. It has to be buyer-led, not seller-led. So you have to follow the buyer's journey, not how you want to sell. It's how they want to buy. So that was key to us, and we did that very early on. We had help, and we relied on outside consultants to help with that. We had an internal team that were focused on it. And then we implemented it not only to our team, the 5-step selling process, but we implemented it to our partners. So we were all speaking the same language. That was key, so that when we sat on a forecast call on Friday, there was a real cadence and a discipline, and the nomenclature was all the same, whether you were on the West Coast or on the East Coast. When I got to Mitel, there was 5 or 6 sales processes that were all done by the individual regional directors, and you didn't know where the customer was in the sales cycle. Sometimes it was in the 70% area, sometimes it was 50, but depending on what coast you were on, it was different. And so we went to one process, and that streamlined the way our forecast calls went on Friday, and so now there's a really nice cadence to it. And our forecast accuracy as a result is one of the best in the industry. We're plus or minus 2% on our forecast accuracy with and that's an indirect sales organization largely with, quarterly revenues in our channel area in the 40-50 million range.
Jeez. Now you said something there when I asked you about sales process, which was it has to be buyer-based. So sell the way the customers want to buy versus the way you want to sell. So that means that you took some time to understand how your customers bought your products and services, just looking at your bio, you haven't been selling the same thing your whole life. I mean, the breadth of what you've been marketing and selling is rather extensive. So when you enter a new organization, Mitel or the other 4 that you've been with, how do you understand how buyers buy?
You've got to go talk to them, and you've got to interview them, and you've got to interview how they not only have bought your equipment in the past, but how they bought other things in the past, and how they investigate the process. Today, with the internet, the buyers are so informed that 40 to 50, 60% of the sales process is done by the time you get to the 0 moment of truth. So when you get that opportunity, you've got to be educated and really be able to know how they buy and how you're going to be able to sell. So it's really important. So a lot of investigation, a lot of interviews with buyers to figure out exactly how they buy and why they buy.
All right, the third thing that you mentioned in the first 120 days roughly is product. So you assessed the team, made some talent changes, you built a custom sales process by understanding how the buyers buy, and then you made sure everybody understood the value proposition of the product and they could articulate that. That's a challenge because Mitel is, I mean, you have a very broad product set. You're in a technologically, confusing space, unified communications. You guys are innovating all the time and you have new offerings. So how do you keep the team trained on all, that big of a catalog?
We built a very structured learning management system. So when I got there was no education, sales education department. Used to have one at Mitel. When we got there, it was disbanded. We had a technical certification department, but we didn't have a sales education department. So week 2, I opened up Mitel Sales University. Week two.
I mean, you had high confidence that that was needed.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that was based on your 25 years of experience that you knew that that was needed in the sales force.
Yeah,
right?
Education is really critical to success in any of the things that I did, whether it was startup companies, turnaround companies, whether it was venture capital backed or publicly traded. Having a very strong educational program in today's economy, in today's environment is key because it changes monthly.
Yeah.
Competitors change how they compete with you.
Right.
The internet provides much greater access to customers, and so your ability to be able to adapt to that change is key. And then, like you said, we have a lot of products, and so to be expert at that, you have to really be you show up to a gunfight, you better not bring a knife. So we made sure that everybody was educated and knew a lot more than the buyer.
Yeah.
If you go to buy a car, for example, and you walk into a high-end car shop, that person selling you that car better know more about that car than you've learned on the web, or else what value is the sales rep? You'll just buy it over the web.
Exactly, because before I walk into that shop, I've done my homework.
You've done your homework. You know what it costs, you know what it does, you know what the competitors look like, you know what a lot of the the features and functions of the car, relatively speaking.
So that's kind of the first 3 or 4 months on the job, right?
Right, yeah.
So now let's say it's month 4 through 12.
Right.
Okay, so you're still in your honeymoon period, but it's about to end.
Yeah.
Right, and it's going to take you to your 1-year anniversary. So now you've got these things in flight, right? There's lots of motion happening.
Yep.
And the challenge now is to get everybody to adopt all this stuff. So how does your strategy change, from say months 4 through 12 versus the first,
90 days.
Yeah.
Okay. So 4 through 12, I focus now on forecasting because your forecast tells you everything. And you have to have an early warning system if the number is looking soft so that you can react in time in order to recover. I think a lot of people get in trouble because they don't forecast well in week 5. They forecast great in week 10. It's too late. So you really need to know in week 5 where you stand and where you're going to be. So in months 4 through 12, I focus a lot on the forecast discipline, in our case on the Salesforce.com implementation and making sure that we got those right. And then the third thing is really top grading the team so that when people resign or move to a different part of our organization or we determine from performance that they're not capable of doing the job, then we top grade that talent to make sure that we're constantly bringing in really inspiring people that make the team even better, where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3 or 4.
Okay, so now let's say in our little case study here that, we're at our 1-year anniversary.
Yep.
And you're doing your strategic planning process for year 2. And again, coming back to the environment here, which is you were hired to generate results quickly. The plan of the company at some point is to sell the company, for a healthy premium so all of the shareholders generate a nice return. Does the strategy change in year 2 or is it more of the same in year 1?
It changes. So I speak in phases. So phase 1 was the first 90. Phase 2 would have been, months 4 through 12. Phase 3, in my case, at Mitel, I'm here 2 years this month. In the second year, it changes a lot. Now what we're looking for is to really make our partner community stronger. So when I got to Mitel, it was a series of lifestyle business partners, largely $50 million partners to $5 million, somewhere in that range. Now we're looking at companies that are publicly traded, that have the same quarterly bias that we do, same quarterly sense of urgency that we do. And so you're looking for a different, more strategic partner that can take you to that next level in your company's life.
Interesting.
And that's what we're doing right now in year 2 and have done a really nice job of bringing on what I think are some really talented partners, across the Americas, not only in the United States, but Canada and in South America, Mexico, et cetera.
So the phases are establish the fundamentals.
Right.
Right. That carries you through the first year.
Yep.
Now you have a capable organization. And then the third phase, I guess, which would be the beginning of year 2, it's dialing it up, going after bigger partners, doing bigger things, because now you have a solid foundation in place.
And if you get the results like we did in year 1, and everybody starts noticing you because now you've got a buzz you've created, the talent's gone up, the results are there, stock tripled.
People believe.
People believe, and so all of a sudden you have access to a stronger partner community. And so now you've got to go out and take advantage of what you've built in year 2.
Okay. Great advice. We need to take a short break, but stick around because when we come back, I'm going to ask Joe to reveal his leadership approach. Leading a team in an environment expecting a lot quickly can be a challenge. Stick around, you won't want to miss this.
So we get hired to transform organizations, and it's incredibly gratifying to see our clients go from where they were to where they can be by the solutions that we can implement, and it's definitely a 1 + 1 = 5, right?
I get to work with clients and change their lives. It's not doing some tactical work, but literally we're changing the way companies operate, number 1. Number 2 is the people I work with, I actually really care about their success, and that motivates me every day. So it's not like I work hard and feel like, oh, I worked all these extra hours. I'm working hard for people I really want to work with that are friends of mine.
So when you can work with your friends, when you can have clients who become your friends and you're helping them, you get this beautiful intersection of things. And to me, that's what it's about.
The playbook isn't always defined. I mean, every company we work with is different. So we're problem solvers. We go in, we figure it out. We have to solve a different problem for every single client. So there's not something that says this is what you do, follow step 1 through 14. There's guidelines, but you have to use your own creativity and apply it to each client.
This is not a table. It is a stage where your performance is measured in numbers. If you reach them, you get an encore. If you don't, it could be curtains. That's why you need the well-rehearsed, proven sales and marketing strategies of SBI.
Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI, and you're watching SBI TV. I am joined today by Joe Vitalone, the Executive Vice President and President of the Americas region for Mitel Networks. Before the break, Joe and I were discussing the specifics of his remarkable ability to generate results quickly, which led him to 5 successful exits. During this segment, I would like to turn our attention to Joe's leadership approach when the mandate is to grow and grow fast. So, Joe, I understand that you give of your time to USC, University of Southern California, and you teach students about human networking and leadership in general. So tell us a little bit about your work with USC.
Okay, it's one of the most rewarding things I've had an opportunity to do. Dr. Steve Martin teaches a class on sales and marketing strategy there. He heard me speak at Berkeley and liked the way the students responded to my lecture. And he was there teaching at UCal, Berkeley, and was also teaching at USC. And then he went full-time at USC, the Marshall School of Business, invited me to guest lecture in one of his classes. I did it my first year, and it was so well received, I was invited back every year after that. So I teach a full class. My topic is human networking, and it's the #1 attended class at USC. It won the Golden Apple Award for best class. So compliments to Dr. Martin on creating an environment that kids are inspired. But what it is a real practical class about real life when they exit USC and what to expect in the job market. Not just academia, it's about the real world and what they're going to face.
So knowing you the way I do, you're a pretty busy guy, and yet you make the time for this.
I do.
Why?
I do, because it's important to me. It's what I found now really important to the students. And they get a lot out of it. I get a lot out of it. I stay in touch with all of them on Facebook. My LinkedIn is, I probably have over 1,000 students now, both at USC and at University of Texas on LinkedIn, and they keep in touch with me, and I keep in touch with them. So it's I just make time for it in my schedule, and I fly to LA, and it's a long trip in a long class, but it's worth it.
Well, good for you. I'm pleased that you give back, and it's kind of you to do that. So in the context of today's subject, which is generating results quickly, what I have found is that the only people that can do that well are great leaders. And having been around you, I think you're a great leader. You're very inspirational. I mean, when you ask people what Joe V's leadership style is, they all can say it like that, which means it's real, right? And it's so real that a world-class learning institution like USC has you come in and teach it to them. So within that, early time period, let's say year one, what is the proper balance of the carrot and the stick?
Well, I think it's individual, but for me, it's definitely more carrot than stick. I think in today's economy and market, I think there's a fine balance between inspiration, motivation, and what I think is constructive criticism. So, I lead from the front, so I'm one of the people that likes to get on the horse out in front, carrying a flag, climbing a mountain with the team versus, and so they see that, and I don't think I could describe my style. I think they could better than I could, but for me, what I've been told is that's what inspires them. And so when you get that kind of feedback, you accentuate what you're strong at, you try to mask your weaknesses, and you build an environment that people are inspired and motivated to do more than they normally would. And when you do that to a wide body of people, it's really powerful. A fighting force of 100, when motivated, will behave like 120. A fighting force of 100, when demotivated, will be 80. The difference is 40. It's a big percentage. Yeah. And so to have a dynamic sales organization, which is what we run, running at 120% capacity, which is what we do. Our CEO always says, sprint the first lap and then pick up the pace. And so we do that at Mitel. And as long as I'm out there picking up the pace, everybody else is picking up the pace. Yeah. And so that's the best way I can explain it.
So what do you say to a board who buys a company, let's say it's a private equity board. Right. They have an investment hypothesis. They want to drive results up super quick. They and the CEO recruit you to come in and do that because you've done it 5 times, right? Yeah. And part of your secret sauce is leadership, right? And they say, I don't believe in that because you can't quantify leadership. Leadership doesn't correlate directly in some number to job performance. What do you say to that? Leadership counts. I mean, it absolutely counts. It's absolutely quantifiable. I don't think you can do it in 90 days, but I think you can do it in a year. I think you could take a look at all of the companies I've been at, pre-me, post-me, and looked at the leaders that have taken over after me, some of which I put in place, and you will see that they respond to strong leadership. And so one of the things you do as a leader is create a really good succession plan so that when you move on, you take care of the people that have taken care of you along the way. And those people go on to be great leaders. And I'm fortunate to, I think, I've got at least 8 or 10 people that have gone on to be CEOs. I've probably 50 that have gone on to be executive vice presidents that have been in our, and have gone on to do some startups. Some are in private equity. Some have gone to public companies. So not only have you had these 5 exits, but after you've exited, the people that stayed behind with the new ownership team have thrived. Oh, yes. Yeah. At almost every one of the companies, and the ones that we've sold have gone on to run those. Huh. I typically leave. I've liked the smaller companies. Mitel's a large company. You highlighted it nicely in the opening, but that was a challenge for me because it's 3,300 employees. It's a big organization. We have 250 quota-carrying salespeople just in the Americas. Plus all the channel partners. 600 to 800 channel partners, depending on which product suite we're looking at, cloud and premise. Yeah, so it's a challenge. But I think if you're the board, you're looking for somebody that can lead and inspire. And if it depends on if it's a startup company or a public company, it's a little bit different in terms of who you hire, what kinds of individuals, and so on. All right, we're going to take a short break, but you're going to want to come back for our last segment with Joe. Why? I'm going to ask him to turn all this great advice into an action plan for you. So if you want to generate results quickly, you're not going to want to miss this. Come back after the break.
We hire players that can go out on the field and score a touchdown right away. It's not, hey, let's get you ready, right? Rookie has to work his way up. No, you're out there. You've been hired as an A player, so get out there and perform your function.
Nothing substitutes for experience. And so in our world, we combine high-level experience, interacting with CEOs, chief financial officers, chief sales officers, marketing vice presidents, and so on.
I was a vice president of sales at a large company, so I know what that person is really dealing with, and I can talk to them in a way that some consultant that has spent their career in academics couldn't do.
If you're going to be around the LeBron Jameses of our industry, you better be making sure you're shooting extra foul shots the night before. Because when the game comes down, the ball may be in your hand and you better stuff it through the hoop.
Your finish line is your number, and the only way to reach it is to make certain everyone is pulling their weight and headed in the same direction. That's why SBI uses proven techniques to bring everyone on your team on board with successful, standardized sales programs, enabling victory at the turn of every quarter.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI, and you're watching SBI TV. Today, my guest is Joe Vitalone, Executive Vice President and President of the Americas regions for Mitel Networks. Before the break, I made you a promise. And that promise was to have Joe give you an action plan for generating big results fast. What is an action plan? In the context of this show, it is the 1 to 3 things to do immediately after watching this show to make your number. So let's get to it. Joe, let's have a hypothetical. The phone rings tomorrow, and it's an executive recruiter. And he opens with the sentence, Joe, you got another one in you. They're representing a board. They want to ramp sales quickly. They want to exit in a 2 to 3 year time period. And they offer you a pile of stock with all the right preferences to get the job done. And I know you're not going anywhere, but if you took the job, hypothetically, what do you do immediately?
So, well, you have to assess the money. So if it's let's say it's a startup company, would sound like, you have to assess what the capital that you have, and you have to control that burn rate. So it's a fine line between growing and then burning the money that you have, because you have to raise more money. That's a problem. So you have to do a real assessment for what you're going to be capable to do based on the money you have.
Okay.
But then the second thing is you got to bring on a great team. And the team that you're going to bring on for a startup that I have had the privilege of working with is different than one that you would have, for example, at a company of our size today. Startup people are a little different in that they're more focused on equity, less on salary, bonus, and those kinds of things. And so, and they work typically for that opportunity to grow that company into something material for not only themselves, but for their family and investors and so on. So people is really, really key. And then you've got to make sure that the product gets into the hands of the right partners, that you target a audience, customer audience, and you don't try to boil the ocean, that you really focus on segments, establish beachheads, and you go in and get some wins quick. The key is to get cash flow positive before you run out of money. So the thing that I have had the opportunity to do is do that and create growth, create a really good go-to-market model, control my burn rate, and in many cases had money left over before we even got acquired or went public. And that's a fine line between overspending and growing. So it's akin to riding a horse where you're pulling on the reins a little bit and kicking with the spurs. And so you've got to know how to balance that to get there.
All right, so in a startup environment, it's come in, figure out the money right away, right? Because you don't want to run out of money, have to raise more money, which takes up your time and dilutes your stock.
Right.
Get the team in place, which is a different type of individual, people that are motivated by the equity event versus the salary and the titles and all of those things.
Correct, yep.
and then figure out where you're going to take that product. Because as a young company, you can't try to sell to everybody. You want to sell to people that are most likely to receive your message quickly, right? Now, contrast that just a little bit for me, that if you went into an established company, maybe it was something that was bought by a private equity firm,
Right.
and you're at scale now, maybe it's $1 billion organization, okay? And it's the same thing, however, right? The plan is to sell it, but it's a different scenario, of course. So what would you do differently in that scenario?
I think in that scenario, you're now focused more on team assessment. On the people side, you're focused more, again, on education, making sure that you're educating.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to grow, but you got to grow profitably. So what you want to see is growth, and you want to see your margins start to rise. And then you spend a lot of time on the partner piece, if in fact you are an indirect selling model. So you have to say, what is your go-to-market? Is it direct or indirect? It might be both, but a lot of times it's one or the other.
Yep.
And then the key, I think, is to really go get some marquee wins and to make sure that you're growing your partner community profitably. And if those things happen, you've got growth, you've got profitable growth, you've got a really dynamic team, your go-to-market model is good, you then are very attractive to somebody that may want to acquire you, because then they can take that product, drive synergies into the organization so you save money, you get economy of scale, and you can take those products and put it through that channel. And so you get a lot of, I think, economy out of multiple sets of products. And we've done that successfully at Mitel, where we've acquired 4 companies in the last year and a half. Integrated those companies, drove synergies nicely out of the organization, saved a lot of money, and yet maintained our revenue rise and growth and margin.
Now, you said something in both scenarios, which is to get some big wins, some big marquee victories, right?
Yes.
I think I know why you want to do that, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So why is that so important that early?
I think when you win marquee accounts like that, it gives you that cachet, I think, in the market to, and people start to notice. And so if you continue just to have lifestyle business partners are really good and they can drive your business, but you also need marquee partners that are publicly traded, that have visibility, that do a lot of marketing on their own, that are also publishing their customers and their testimonials to the market, whether it's on a blog or on social media and so on. And then there's a lot of press. And the public markets follow the larger companies. Because our releases will be on their site and vice versa. And so you get some really good, so to win big in the customer area and win big in the partner area is really important. Continue to grow, your core business, but to strengthen yourself in those areas.
So put me in the seat. So I take the job, I'm in the seat, I'm laser focused now on getting these quick, big marquee wins. I mean, do you go to the immediate forecast and see if there's anything in there that you can go make happen? Do you go and say, who are the top 20 accounts we want to open that we're nowhere with? So what do you do?
Yeah, you really focus on the top 20 deals. So if you looked into any of our forecasts by region, you would see the top 10 deals in each one of the markets. And then you make sure that your best leaders and your best salespeople are working those deals so that you close. You want to, bigger isn't better, Greg. Better is better. And it's been proven. Innovation wins. You don't have to be Cisco to be successful and have a big name. You can be successful, with a lesser name publicly if you're out-innovate and you can outsell. But you have to be focused. You got to have a strategy. And when you win, people notice.
Yeah.
You take BlackBerry, for example, right? RIM didn't have a big name, and they took over a market for a long period of time.
Created a market.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, what happened? They got out-innovated.
Yeah.
And so, again, bigger isn't always better. Better is better, and I think you've got to be able to convey that. But you need the wins to validate what you're doing. And we've done that at the company that I'm at. We've shown that we can go up against the big guys and win the big deals. And that's attractive to a lot of people. Not only people that may want to acquire you, but people that would want to be acquired by you, which is what we've done. We've been very acquisitive in the market, for example, not the acquiree, but the acquirer. And so as a result, we've been able to attract some really nice companies because they see the economies and they're attracted to our go-to-market model and some of the wins that we have, and we can leverage that.
Okay. Last piece of the action plan is, since you've done this 5 times, okay, I'm sure you've made some mistakes, right? So what do you avoid at all cost?
You avoid, if you're a startup, you avoid running out of money. So that's the
Number one
death
thing.
blow. Yeah, you've got to control the burn. Number 2, you can't afford to make a mistake on the product segment of the market you're going to go after. So don't go after federal government if you know JITC certification is a key thing to getting into the DOD, and it's going to cost you more money than you'll have. and you burn a lot of money and you get nothing for the effort. So that's an example of a mistake that I made and won't make again. And so really pick your spots, be successful, don't boil the ocean, and make sure that you're spending on things that can win. And build a pipeline. It's all about building a pipeline, generating leads, building a pipeline, because your pipeline is everything. You can move your closing ratio variably, plus or minus 5%, if you're successful. But if you have a really strong pipeline, it'll sustain you for a long period of time, and it'll keep you from running out of money.
Now, that's an action plan for a startup.
Yep.
It feels like to me that's almost an identical action plan for a private equity-owned company.
Yeah.
But am I wrong there? Is it the same thing?
Well, with private equity, you're not going to run out of money per se, and there's not going to be that dilution that, or the risk in the back of your head of that happening. But the other elements are very much the same. I think with a private equity company that's a little more well-funded, you're focused really more on team, growing the pipeline, getting into new markets, developing a better channel and go-to-market strategy, and generating more leads for the business, because you want to fund the partners that you have to help them grow. If your partners are growing and your partners are happy and your employees are the same, you're gonna have a really successful business model. So you got to measure that. You got to measure partner satisfaction. You got to measure customer sat. You've got to measure employee sat, and we do all those things. And we've seen a big change in our company of I'll just take my own group, on employee satisfaction from the sales side. When I got there, it was not good. Now it's world class, because people are having fun, they're inspired, they're making more money than they did a year, 2 years ago. The company's growing, the stock is going up, we're winning bigger deals, and winning is fun. And when you create a winning environment, whether it's startup, private equity, it's a lot of fun. And when I stop having fun, that's when I'll probably talk to that executive recruiter. But right now, that's not going to happen. I'm having a blast.
It's funny. Employee engagement goes up when everyone's winning. Isn't it amazing what happens?
It's winning is contagious.
It really is.
It really is. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun to get up and go to work in the morning, and you get opportunities to do things that you would never get to do, and travel places that you've never. And so that part of it's rewarding for everybody. It's rewarding for families. It's rewarding for employees, and it gives people an opportunity to grow their careers, which is neat.
This is wisdom that can only come from experience. Joe, on behalf of everyone at SBI and all of our viewers, thank you for coming on the show and contributing to the field that we're in, sales effectiveness. And at the rate that Mitel is going, my guess is that the big boys are going to be knocking on your door here shortly, and maybe this is number 6 in the making. I would also like to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this show, I suggest you subscribe to SBI TV at salesbenchmarkindex.com/TV. Or you can find us at our SBI YouTube channel. That might be a little bit easier for you. We have some outstanding guests like Joe confirmed for future episodes that you will not want to miss. Until then, I wish you the best of luck as you try and make your number.